Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening around the world. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Blackjack. Today I will be doing a deck list based on my own personal interest. It's closely aligned to a deck that I currently own, which is the reason that I have not built it before, but I really enjoy the concept and it's something that I look forward to putting together probably at some point in the near future. If you're interested in having me build a deck for you, or maybe give you some thoughts about making a couple changes with a deck that you're not happy with, in the comment section down below, I'm looking for any of the following metrics: a commander, a theme, a budget, or any restrictions or pet cards that you have. So if you're interested, please leave a comment and I'll put a deck together for you and I'll make a video about it. But today, we are simply doing a deck based around Zaxara, the Exemplary. So for those of you who do not know what it does, it is Bug, which is black, green, and blue, or Sultai for the newer players, and a colorless. Death Touch, tap to add 2 mana of any color. And then whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, create a 0/0 green Hydra, then put X/1/1 counters on it. That is going to be not important at all to our game plan. We're pretty much going to use those Hydras as blocking fodder. Obviously, there are going to come times where we make big Hydras and we're able to take out players with it, but I can't stress enough that that is absolutely not what we're interested in doing, and that is not what the deck is accomplishing. We only have 7 creatures here. Most things that we're going to be doing in this deck are based on X spells, and the idea of the deck is big mana and a lot of mana as fast as possible, winning with something like Exsanguinate. The other thing that we could win with is, I don't know why it's not coming to me right now, but as soon as I see it, I'll know. Oh, that's why it's a sorcery. Torment of Hailfire. So Exsanguinate and Torment of Hailfire are 2 main win cons. We're going to be putting, ideally 20 to 30 into X to pretty much just one-shot the table. Otherwise, we can also Villainous Wealth an opponent and basically just take their, top 20 or 30 cards and use that to win the game. But ideally, those are our 3 main ways of winning the game, and everything else is going to be controlling the board or drawing cards in order to get us there as fast as possible. So if you've watched my deck techs in the past, I have a Lord Windgrace deck that does something similar. It basically just ramps hard and as fast as humanly possible, and then it wins with something like Exsanguinate or Torment of Hailfire instead of going the creature route with things like Avenger of Zendikar and Titania, Priest of Argoth, that kind of card. So let's start with Gadwick. Triple blue and X. When it enters, draw X cards. When you cast a blue spell, tap a permanent. So the tap ability is inconsequential, but being able to draw cards is obviously good. You're going to notice the theme for pretty much every card in the deck is either draw cards or ramp us or deal with something on the board. Hydroid Crisis, another X spell where we can gain life and draw cards when we cast it. Oracle Moldiah is one of my personal favorite green cards. I find that it's just, for the rate, it's very good at what it does, being able to look at the top card of your library, being able to play extra lands. It really helps ramp you, and it really helps circulate the cards at the top of your deck so you can actually draw spells more often. Sakura Tribuilder is the beginning of the 10 pieces of ramp. I put in all of my base green decks so we can get that out of the way. Sakura Tribuilder is 1. And then we have Cultivate, Kodama's Reach, Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Rampant Growth, Soul Rain, Felwar Stone, and Arcane Signet. So 10 pieces up, 10 pieces down, keeps our deck consistent, keeps our game plan consistent, so that way our games are not extremely volatile. This deck, however, adds one more piece in Animus Awakening. I wouldn't play this in most decks, but because this is an X theme deck, X spell deck, this is the card that I really couldn't pass up on, and it says reveal the top X cards of your library, put all lands from among them on the battlefield and the rest on the bottom in any order. And then if there's two or more instants and sorceries in our graveyard, we get to untap those cards. So ideally, we're putting 6 or 7 into the X, and we're going to get 2 or 3 lands out of it. Excuse me. And then in addition to that, be able to untap those. So for this kind of a deck, I think it's worth it. Seedborn Muse is our only game changer. I'm starting to grasp game changers and what they mean and how to kind of identify the bracket that a deck should be in. I believe that this deck lives probably in bracket 2 best. You could add a couple more game changers and you could add a couple higher tier cards and bring it up to bracket 3 fairly easily. But most of the decks that I find myself building are around bracket 2, sometimes leaning into bracket 3. But being able to untap our stuff, get multiple uses out of Zaxara through the whole round of the table is obviously advantageous for us because we get to make extra creatures, but then we also are able to do things like deploy a Hydroid Crisis to draw a couple of cards and then untap with the next player and still hold up our massive suite of counterspells and removal and interaction. Steelbane Hydra is one of the only Hydras in the deck. Obviously, you could go the route of doing like a Hydra theme for Zaxara, and you could play, you know, 15, 20, 25 Hydras and have this be an X spell Hydra deck and have it be counters going everywhere, but that's just not the angle that I liked. The only reason that I put this one is because it's a Hydra that interacts well with our commander, but in addition to that, we're able to utilize it to actually deal with things on the board by destroying artifacts and enchantments. Goose Mother is going to create foods, and then when it attacks, we can sacrifice food to draw a card. So back to the sorcery section. We do have Balaged Recovery as one of our MDFCs. We have a bunch of removal. We have Black Sun Zenith. So I like this spell because one, I honestly like it more than most spells that wipe the board in Commander because it does -X/-X. So it gets around Hexproof, it gets around Indestructible. It overlaps and it kind of goes over the top of all of those protection type spells. Plus you get to shuffle it in and possibly do it again. Blue Sun's Twilight is gain control of a creature with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, then you get to create a copy of that. Curse of the Swine is X turn stuff into 2/2s that are boars. So in a way, it's kind of like our version of Swords to Plowshares, but instead of gaining life, we give them a 2/2, which doesn't really matter for us, and we get to obviously target a lot more. Distorting Wake is a good bounce spell. Exsanguinate, again, alongside Torment of Hailfire and Villainous Wealth are our 3 main win conditions. I personally love Villainous Wealth. Being able to steal the top 25 cards of somebody else's library and utilize that to win the game is awesome. Exsanguinate and Torment of Hailfire are not as volatile and not as non-determinate. These cards will take people out of the game, but all 3 of them are very good at what they do. Finale of Revelation is good card draw. Gaze of Granite is another good way to wipe stuff on the board. Mind Grind is actually kind of like the 4th secret win condition. I don't expect to win the game a lot with it, but it is interesting to be able to kind of dump, hypothetically 10 into X, and then people have to reveal cards until they reveal X land cards and then put all of them, the rest, into their graveyard. So if you do it for 10, this might be taking out a third of their library. If you do have Cabal Coffers and Urborg online in order to generate essentially double mana, and you can do this for 20, 25, there's a good chance that you're going to haphazardly take a player out of the game. Mind Spring is obviously more card draw. Nylea's intervention does a good job of searching for specific lands. Again, I already mentioned we do have the Cabal Coffers and Urborg package. That's something that we'll be looking for fairly often. Or if for some reason there's a ton of flying creatures, if you're playing against a dragon deck or something, this does just randomly deal with dragons. Pest Infestation is another X spell that allows us to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Profane Command can do a couple of things. We can have it be a one-off effect to take a player out of the game. We can bring a creature back, which probably isn't going to be useful in this deck. We can deal damage to a creature or give it -X/-X, and then we can also give a creature fear. I imagine more often than not this is going to be target player loses the game and then take a creature out somewhere else. So for instance, we have Black Sun's Twilight. This is another way to deal with creatures. Blue Sun Zenith is another way to card draw. And then we have a pretty big counterspell suite. So we have Clash of Wills, Condescend, Counterspell. What else do we have here? We have Logic Knot. We have Power Sink. We have Spectral Denial, Spell Burst, Syncopate. So we have a lot of counter spells. This is a deck where you are going to try to control the board and you're going to try to maintain how strong and how good of engines you're letting other people get online. Ideally, you want to be having the most lands and casting the biggest spells. So if someone is trying to ramp as hard as you or try to match that power level that you're going for, you are going to be using these spells to maintain them and make sure that you're the one that's staying ahead and you're the one that's staying on top. Diviner's Portent is another way to draw cards. Erebos' Intervention is a way to deal with a creature or well also gain life. Even the Score is just more X card draw. Heroic Intervention is just a card I'm starting to put in most green decks. It's gotten a lot cheaper. You know, back when this was originally printed, it was like $25. Now $10 for essentially a way to save your entire board from a board wipe is a pretty good rate and something that is hard for me to pass up on when I build these decks. Icy Blast is an interesting way to tap creatures down and then also stun them. March of Swirling Wisps is a way that we can phase a creature out attacking us, or we could also do something like phase out Zaxara if we want to save it. Outrageous Robbery is an interesting card. You get to exile the top X cards of a person's library face down, and then at any time you can cast those spells. So you hypothetically, if you have 12 mana, you can hold up counter spells through the entire turn cycle, and then if there's nothing to counter, you can take the top 8 cards of somebody's library and basically have bought yourself a new hand at instant speed with somebody else's cards. Pull from Tomorrow's more card draw. Repulsive Mutation is going to be another way for us to counter spells as well as add counters. We don't really have much of a counter package here, but it was already working by allowing us to counter spells, so I decided to throw it in. Revitalizing Repast is a way for us to save our own commander, and it's also our second MDFC. Slice from Shadows is another way to take a creature out. And then we have Stroke of Genius for more card draw. Thassa's Intervention for us to either counter a spell or get some selection from the top. And then Tyvar's Stand is another way for us to save our commander. When I'm looking at cards like Tyvar's Stand and Revitalizing Repast, there's pretty much nothing here I would save other than my commander or possibly Oracle or Seedborn Muse, depending on the progression of the game and how far we are in. Artifacts, small package. We already talked about the ramp. We do have Lightning Greaves just to keep our commander safe. And then Expedition Map is, I think, our third or our fourth way to find a Cabal Coffers and or Urborg. It's really important that we get that online as fast as possible to start really getting ahead of the table with cards. Exploration allows us to play an additional land on each of our turns. This deck is going to draw cards pretty much, I would say, every turn or every other turn of the game. Going to be drawing a decent mass of cards, like 3 to 5. So I think you're going to be stuck with lands in your hand quite a bit, and having a card like this to get those out of your hand and keep circulating through your deck and keep your hand full of spells while maintaining a lot of land drops is going to be really good. So Freed from the Real and Penniman's Aura are both ways for us to go infinite with our commander. So as you can see with both of these creatures, you can pay a blue to untap a creature, and Zaxara can tap to add 2 mana of any color. So you're basically going to enchant Zaxara, tap him to add 2 blue to your pool, and then pay 1 in order to untap him with one of those enchantments, and then you now have 1 blue mana floating. So you can do this and, 500,000 times, and you could have 500,000 of each of your colors. So that would be a very, very good way of drawing your entire deck and then kind of just winning the game on the spot with one of your X spells. But if you are playing in a table where you're not really looking to go infinite, then these are cards that you can simply just choose not to cast. But I put them in here because I did want to be able to kind of fight at around a power level 3. Like I said, I think this will live around 2 to 3, and I want to be dangerous in both of those brackets. So I added both of these as options to deal with decks that are going to go a little bit faster or going to look to also combo out. Phyrexian Arena, unreadable, but good, consistent card draw. Just being able to get an extra card every upkeep. And then obviously the best card in the deck is Unbound Flourishing. So this allows you to, whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana value that contains X, you double that value. Not going to come up a ton for us, but the most important part is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it has X, you get to copy that spell. So if you have this out and you cast that outrageous robbery for 10, you get to do that twice. So you get 20 cards. Or if you're looking to win the game with your Torment of Hailfire and you cast Torment of Hailfire for 15, it's going to copy 2 Torment of Hailfires for 15. So you're really doing it for 30, which is almost assuredly going to take players out of the game. Lands, there's nothing super noteworthy. We do have the package of Cabal Coffers and Urborg, which is something that you should be often looking to do, if not pretty much every single game. We also have Alchemist Refuge and Mistrise Village, both as ways to kind of make our spells uncounterable slash have flash. So Alchemist Refuge is a way that we can kind of hold up a win condition and then go for it on top of somebody else trying to do something big. So we can kind of hold up a massive Torment of Hailfire until the end step so we don't have to tap out on our turn. And in the same way, but just a different how the execution is Mistrise Village allows us to kind of give Torment of Hailfire or Exsanguinate the ability to not be countered, and then it just guarantees wins us the game. So pretty simple, but I think a take on Zaxara that most people don't go for. Most people go for the Hydra route with, +1/+1 counters all over the place, and that's definitely a cool way to do it. But I think this is an interesting take, and again, if you like this kind of a deck, I'd highly recommend you check out my Lord Windgrace deck tech. It's fairly similar, just with one different color. But as always, I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much, and Godspeed.